Well, hey there, reader friends. I'm Erica, and I am going to be filming from my car today on my lunch break, because that's the way it is. That's the working life. This video is a quick response video to a video that I watched, which is called How I Rediscovered Reading in the Digital Age, or something like that, by Nathaniel Drew. And I thought that was a really interesting premise because myself, I love reading, and then I got to thinking about why I read and how I am reading is changing and has been changing and has not been the same throughout my life. So that's what I'm going to talk about today. So I don't actually really remember learning how to read very well because I have been read to and reading for most of my life. But what's interesting to me is that when I started reading, I read voraciously, and I read everything I could get my hands on. I read American Girl books, whale books, Dear America books, Harry Potter. I read them all. I loved them all. I would literally sit in my room in my chair, which was like an old office chair that was like black and patent leather, fake leather, I don't know what it was, but it was literally falling apart, and I would sit and I would read for hours and hours and hours and hours and hours, and it was just pure joy. And that's how I discovered my love of reading. I come from a reading family. I saw my parents reading all the time, and I just loved it. I loved it, and I love it. But then in high school, I started having to read a lot of things for school. Things that I wasn't necessarily interested in reading. And while I still loved reading and I still read things on my own, my reading self changed. I found reading to be less of a thing I would choose to do in my spare time because I had television and I had internet and I had other things going on. And so reading for pure pleasure didn't take as much of a front seat to other things when it came to what I would elect to do in my spare time. And that kind of continued throughout college. I had to read so much for school that I didn't want to read in my spare time. And so I didn't. And I watched a lot of television. And this is also when the internet became a thing and YouTube became a thing, and I discovered other ways to spend my time. Now that I'm out of school, since I've gotten out of school, I've had to rediscover how to read for myself, because for most of my teenage years and adult life, I've had to read things for school and now read things for my job. I'm a librarian. Right now I'm a youth services children's librarian, but that could change at some time. I don't know. Who knows what the future holds? But I have to read a lot of stuff for work. And I find myself really craving that voracious reading self that existed in 8 and 9-year-old Erica that hasn't really been a thing as much. I find myself having to be really purposeful about how I read, when I read, and make the decision that, oh, I am going to read this book for myself for fun right now. I have to be intentional about it. And this got me wondering, why is it that I have to be so intentional about reading for pleasure? Shouldn't it be an easy, just something I do? And I wonder if some of that is because there is so much other stuff out there to take my time. Not just television, which takes a lot of time, and not just gaming, but the infinite scroll and the feed and all these things. And I don't necessarily think those things are bad. Obviously I like YouTube, I like using social media, but I wonder if I didn't have them, if my reading would be different. And I wonder if by limiting my use of those things, I could rediscover the reading as the first choice, first thing I want to do in my spare time self that hasn't really been present. I don't know if this makes me a booktube poser. I'm kind of nervous to talk about this with you guys because there is this perception that booktubers will do anything, they read in their spare time and that's what they love to do. And that's true, but I am not that's not reading for pleasure, reading for myself. I have to set time to do it. Not just because of all the other things I could do, but because I'm so busy. So I'm curious, do you guys do that? How do you set time to read? Is it something that you just do all the time? I find that I can't, some booktubers I know have their books on their phones and they have their books on their tablets and they just read when they're in lines and they read all the time. My brain is such that if I really want to enjoy reading and be immersed in the book I'm reading, I have to be not doing something else or waiting for something else. Does that make sense? I have to be actually like able to just sit down and read. I'm really curious about this. How is it that we maintain this love of reading when there is so much demand, so many demands on our time? How is it that we read for pleasure when so much of our lives often reading becomes something we do for work, for school? What role does reading for pleasure play for us? I'm very curious about these questions. I'd love to hear your thoughts. I might say more about this later, but my arm is tired and I need to go eat my lunch. But I thought I would just do a quick discussion video about this, post some questions. I'll leave a link to Nathaniel's video that got me thinking about these questions down below. And I will see you next time. Feel free to leave a comment, subscribe if you'd like to, and that's it. Bye guys.